Now, I'm going to digress a little and tell you a little about me. Not because I'm in any way special, but because I was absolutely typical amongst those who fought in the battle in terms of age, education, background, and training, that sort of thing. Well, I joined the volunteer in the summer of 1938, when I was 18, my 18th birthday, in fact. I wanted to go to Cranwell, being a regular officer, but my mum would not allow it, because in the First World War, she said she'd mixed a lot of RAF officers and RAFC officers, and they were all drunks. And she had no intention of having her only son go down that particular path. So I had never been near an aircraft in my life, and when I joined the VR, the first aircraft I flew was a DH Gypsy Moth. Well, I was sent to Scotland, and then I flew biplanes, the Hawker Hart, the Hawker Fury, and at the end of my flying training, which is the early part of 1940, I was given 1 day's leave, and I was posted to 249 Squadron, H Squadron, which was at RAF Church Fenton in Yorkshire. WEF with effect from the 15th of May. Well, I had no idea what H was, but I assumed it was Hurricane. And I have no idea what Church Fenton was, and I had to find my old school atlas to find out where it was. So anyhow, I turned up at Yorkshire, and I went into the officers' mess, and as one did in those days, you got your visiting card and you put it on a silver salver in the officers' mess, and I found that nobody had ever heard of me. Not only that, but nobody had heard of my squadron. And eventually someone came round and said that I was the first officer in a newly forming squadron. So 2 days after that, we lined up, we'd collected about 10 pilots then, and a chap with lots of scrambled egg turned up with his hat, and his name was, he said, my name is Air Vice Marshal Richard Saul, and he was the First World War pilot. And he said, he welcomed us to 13 Group, which we were in, and he said, we had 5 weeks to train ourselves up to a sufficient level to take on the might of the Luftwaffe. And I'm bound to say we looked sideways at each other, because there were only 10 of us, and we hadn't got any aeroplanes. And then out of the blue, and a great surprise to me anyway, because we had designated a Hurricane squadron, 18 Spitfires turned up. Nobody had ever flown a Spitfire, and we didn't know really what to do. So we found a Spitfire, we put it up on trestles in the hangar, and I was plonked in there, and the chap came back down and said, now, this is the things that matter. This is the throttle here, and this is the control column there. And I'm going to tie a blindfold around your head, and we want you to feel around for the knobs and the bits. And when you've satisfied yourself, you know where they all are, come back and tell us. Well, at lunchtime, I reported myself fit to fly a Spitfire. So I sat there in the cockpit of the Spitfire, and I had lots and lots of things around me that I didn't know anything about. And I sat there, and I realized I didn't even know how to start the engine. So I beckoned the sergeant up, and I said, how'd you start this thing? He said, you don't know? So I said, no, I don't. Nobody's ever shown me. So he said, well, you see those 2 things down there, you pull those up, those are the fuel cocks, and you see that thing you pull out, squirt some fuel into the engine, and then you do this and you do that, and then you eventually, if you press that there, it'll probably start, which it did. And I taxied out, and I had instructions ringing in my ears. Now move the nose left and right because you can't see out of a Spitfire. The nose is so long. Don't put the brakes on too hard, otherwise you'll stand it on its nose. And because the radiators are offset, don't boil the bloody engine, you see. So I taxied out and I took off, and I suddenly found myself flying an aircraft which was about 315 miles an hour faster than anything I've ever flown before.